Hi boys and girls, we're going to do a little more work with theme today. So we're going to start with a read aloud story and then we'll do some thinking together. And our story is called Lights, Camera, Chewy. Cut, 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 I shouted, but that didn't stop Chewy from chasing after the squirrels that had caught his eye halfway through the shot. This was not at all how I pictured the big chase scene of my movie playing out. You're supposed to be running after the cupcake thief, not squirrels, I said. But Chewy didn't care. He had already moved on to chewing his leash. If only he had as much passion for acting as he had for chewing on things, I thought. And don't even get me started on the leash. What kind of Hollywood stunt dog wears a leash? It was Dad's one rule, though. Because Chewy was only a puppy, I had to keep him on the leash whenever we filmed outside. As long as I followed that rule, I could use Dad's old cell phone to shoot my movie. Let's try this again, I said as I put Chewy back on his mark. I had learned that mark means an actor's starting position. I held onto his leash, hit the big red record button on the phone screen, and yelled, "Action!" This time, Chewy ran the entire length of the backyard without getting distracted. With the leash on, though, he didn't exactly appear to be in any real hurry to catch anyone. The only way to make this look real would be to take off the leash, but that would mean breaking the promise I had made Dad. On the other hand, if I moved quickly and was careful with my camera angles, would Dad ever know at all? After unhooking the leash, I put Chewy down on his mark and hit record. But before I could shout action, Chewy's ears popped up. He turned to the sound of footsteps walking past our driveway. It was Mrs. Yang, our next door neighbor. She was Chewy's favorite, probably because she loved to give him treats. Chewy bolted across the yard and down the driveway. He greeted Mrs. Yang with a bark and playfully jumped in circles around her. Here you can see the picture. "You must smell the doggy biscuits I just bought for you," she said to him. That's when Chewy noticed her grocery bag. As if it were one of his toys, he grabbed it with his mouth and pulled. I watched in horror as Mrs. Yang's groceries spilled all over the sidewalk. I wanted to apologize. I wanted to help Mrs. Yang pick up her things, but then I remembered something. If Dad found out I had taken Chewy's leash off, I wouldn't be able to use his cell phone anymore. And without a camera, I wouldn't be able to finish my movie. In a panic, I grabbed Chewy and ran inside the house. All afternoon, I replayed the scene in my head, not the heroic one for my movie of Chewy saving the day, but the one of his tearing Mrs. Yang's bag. Over and over, I watched myself run away without apologizing or offering to pick up the mess. When Dad arrived home that evening, I handed him his cell phone. "Did you finish shooting your movie already?" he asked. I shook my head and told him everything that had happened. "Thanks for telling me," said Dad when I was done with the story. "I think a week off from using the camera should give you enough time to figure out how to stick to our rule and still make a good movie." I nodded. I also need to talk to Mrs. Yang. Dad stood on the sidewalk holding Chewy while I walked up to Mrs. Yang's front door. My hands shook as I knocked. To my surprise, Mrs. Yang answered with a smile. I apologized to her for running away, for not helping pick up her groceries. I was scared, I admitted. I was so focused on trying to finish my movie that I made some bad choices. "Apology accepted, Lee," said Mrs. Yang. "Did you say you're making a movie about that puppy of yours?" She pointed to Chewy, who was now trying to chew on Dad's shoelaces. I nodded. "Well, I'd love to see it soon when it's finished. In fact, my son owns a coffee shop nearby, and he has a screen and a projector. I'll ask him if we could have a viewing party there," she said. "That would be incredible," I said. "Maybe Chewy could come see himself on the big screen." Mrs. Yang chuckled. Well, I'll be sure to bring some of those doggy biscuits he loves. We certainly don't want the movie star to go hungry during his own premiere. And here he is talking with Mrs. Yang. So when we're thinking about our story, the first thing we kind of want to think about would be like a summary. What were the most important things that we learned from it? So I know that you have seen someone in wanted but so, and I added a then to this. And so our somebody is Lee, and it's the story in Lights, Camera, Chewy. And he wanted his dog to cooperate so he could finish making his movie, so he took off Chewy's leash. But the dog got distracted, ran over to Mrs. Yang, and ripped her grocery bag. So Lee grabbed Chewy and ran home, and he confessed his mistake to Dad. Then he went and apologized to Mrs. Yang. So our summary is really easy when we do someone in wanted but so, and then you can add what happened at the end. And we're kind of thinking about those important parts of the story. And we're going to talk about theme today, but I also wanted us to talk about main idea. We've done a lot of main idea and details, I know, in school this year. And there is a difference between our main idea and our theme when we're looking at them. So I have my board here. And if we look at our main idea, it tells us what the story is mostly about. And when we're thinking about theme, the theme is our message or a lesson from the story that we can apply to our life. And so when we're starting to think about theme, an easy way to start that would be almost like with a little seed. We just want one little idea that we can build on or kind of grow, like our seed grows into a plant. And so writing down a 1 or 2 word topic is kind of the little seed we start with. And it helps us come up with our bigger idea, which is the theme. So some of the topics in our story today were responsibility, when he had to share the camera that Dad gave him and the phone and use it the right way and be responsible for it. Definitely a topic from our story was honesty. He had to come clean and tell Dad the truth about what happened. Definitely fear, when he was afraid of what would happen if Dad found out he took Chewy off the leash. We had a topic of obedience. He didn't obey Dad in the beginning. Honor, or to do good. He decided that he had to make the right choice and come clean with Dad and talked with him. That showed honor. And even kind of courage in the story of coming to Dad and Mrs. Lang having to apologize for what he did. So in order to come up with our theme, we take a look at our topic, that one word, that seed, and we're going to turn it into a sentence. And then that makes it a good theme of a story. So if I'm talking about our main idea, I'm also going to show you what it looks like as a theme for the book. So one of the main ideas in our story today was Lee was making a movie with Dad's phone. And that has to do with that responsibility piece. Dad was trusting him to use the phone and follow the rules. And when we're starting off writing a theme, we start by saying the author believed that to get us going. So the author believed that for thinking about responsibility, you have to be responsible when you borrow something. Now, a really important thing to keep in mind, main idea is always what we call book specific. It has text details in it to support your thinking. I'm using Lee's name and I'm telling what Lee did in the story. When I am thinking about theme, it is not book specific. I don't want to see details from your story in here as far as names or Chewy and his leash. We're thinking about responsibility in general that would help me in my life or you at home or might teach someone in your class. An important lesson that we can use for anyone at any point in our life. So the author believed you have to be responsible when you borrow something. This is a main idea. It talks about what happened exactly in the story. This is a theme, that lesson we learn that helps us in life. Another main idea in our story is Lee had to follow Dad's rule. The author believed if someone gives you a rule to follow, you need to obey. So that had to do with our topic of obedience. So that's our seed, our topic, our little idea. We turn it into a sentence over here. Theme is always a full sentence. And if I were to rewrite this. If someone said, what's the theme of the story? I just take out those words, the author believed that. This gets me thinking about what the author taught me in the story. What did he believe? What did he prove to me in the story? But if I were to write the theme, I would say, if someone gives you a rule to follow, you need to obey. That is a theme in our book. Another main idea, Lee grabbed Chewy and ran home without helping. Again, it's book specific. There's the name and those text details. What does that tell me about what the author believed? So one thing that might help us, we could think about what problem our character is facing. That might help you come up with our main idea or especially our theme. What did the character learn from this? And what message can I take away? So those questions I was asking myself as I was thinking about the story. And he ran home, and I know that he was afraid. He was really afraid that Dad was going to find out that he took the leash off the dog and he was going to get into trouble. So that would make me think the author was trying to teach me when I disobey, I might get in trouble and I might be scared by that. So I'm taking my seed of fear and I'm turning it into my theme. The author believed that we sometimes make bad decisions when we are afraid. So by thinking about the problems of our characters, what they learned, helps me think about the message that the author was trying to teach me. And then our last main idea, Lee confessed to Dad and apologized to Mrs. Yang. The seed for that one would be being honest or even having honor. The author believed that it is best to be honest and take the consequences for your mistake. And again, I can take off these first words right there. If I covered up the author believed that, and someone said, what is the theme of this book? It is best to be honest and to take the consequences for your mistake. So I have 4 main ideas. We probably could have done a few more, but I was really concentrating on someone in wanted but so. What was the kind of the main idea, the summary of this, what the big important key details helped me come up with my 4 main ideas. And then those seeds, those topics I thought of, helped me rewrite that again with what the author believed. And if I took those words out and just said, you have to be responsible when you borrow something. If someone gives you a rule to follow, you need to obey. Those are the themes. And a really important message, there can be more than one theme in a story. So sometimes we're taking, whether it's a test or working with our ELA stories in class, your teacher may say, what's the theme? As long as you can give a story detail to prove it, you can come up with a number of themes. There's not one correct theme. And I could prove this by going back and looking over here for those story details. So we're going to be doing some more work with theme as we go through the week.